today for a conversation about the results of the elections that happened in Slovakia last weekend. So we really appreciate your interest in Slovakia. How many Slovaks do we have in the room? 1, 2, 3. How many of you have met Martin before? Or have Googled him? Or know something about him? Or have Googled about what happened in Slovakia? Just to know what's the point of departure of the knowledge in the room. So thanks a lot. My name is Lucia Klestincova, and this is Martin Hojsík, our guest today, member of the European Parliament and member of Progressive Slovakia, one of the political parties that participated in the elections, and we will discuss what happened. So good morning, Martin, to you as well.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
So let's open with what actually happened. Progressive Slovakia, as member of the ALDE party, didn't make it to the parliament with around 900 votes missing. This is a consequence of the fact that Progressive Slovakia was running in the elections together with another party as a coalition, where the threshold for entry into the parliament moves from 5% to 7%. And so with the 6.96% of votes that Progressive Slovakia and Spolu, the other party, were granted in the elections, unfortunately you didn't make it. So please tell us, over to you now, what is your interpretation of the result first?
Well, for me it's harder to interpret it as you might think I'm a big insider, but I was actually focusing mostly on delivering my mandate as an MEP rather than being part of the campaign itself or kind of the campaign core team. Of course, I was helping in a campaign, but so for me, I don't have the deep insight into the strategy of the campaign. So that's kind of the starting disclaimer. What happened? First of all, we have decided not to, so to say, trick the rules as everybody else, and went for normally full-fledged coalition, which requires 7%, as opposed to a number of other parties which were coalitions and yet were running as a single party. That's a technicality because, honestly, the original expectations were anyway substantially higher than before. You might remember we actually won as a coalition the European Parliament elections. Now, what have changed in the last, 9 months since the European Parliament elections is, first of all, there was a creation of another party which originally was supposed to be, or kind of the people around it were expected to join the coalition, and it was the party of the former president Andrej Kiska, which barely made it into the parliament. They were having high hopes, and they were kind of, their initial assessment was like, they're going to beat us, they're going to beat everybody, they're going to win the elections. And you have to realize a president with 100% brand recognition, so to say, because Progressive Slovakia is around only for 3 years as a party, managed to barely make it into the parliament. The elections have been, so that did cost us part of the votes. Second, of course, clearly the campaign didn't run as it should have been running. It didn't have the impact as it should have been impacted. I'm not going to analyze why this was the case, but clearly it was the case because we didn't have enough support. I think what changed importantly in the operating environment in the politics is that the way the whole campaign was run and the way what was having the largest impact was, I would call it performance populism. The party, well, legally it's a party, but actually it's just a candidate list run by a leader with quite uncertainty on the actually backing he has within the party. That's still something which remains to be seen, and the coalition will depend on it. The leader of the winning party, Igor Matovic, managed to visualize, managed to capture the imagination of the people in the anti-corruption team, which was his primary team, by visualizing the problems. So he went to the villa of the former finance minister in Cannes and showed, like, look, this guy implicated in the corruption, of course, never charged, so he is innocent until proven otherwise. This is the villa which should belong to the Slovak Republic, stood in front of it, made a YouTube video, and captured the audience with it. he went to Cyprus to the box office company, which is controlled by one of the larger financial players in Slovakia, which they use for sucking out the profits from health insurance. Say, hey, this is where your health insurance money goes. And we did more technocratic approach where we actually showcase, like, look, this is the law proposal that we're going to propose to ensure that there is no kind of a vertical monopolization in the healthcare sector. This is the law where we should prevent the monopolization and kind of capture of the media. And public didn't get that because it was, I believe, the right solutions that we are proposing, yet it wasn't something they could get and kind of really get a grip of. And they reacted way better to kind of seeing firsthand, like, okay, this is the villa that should belong to all of you. So yes, I think what we witness is a very effective, I don't want to call it populism, but essentially very effective performance politics, which with high voter turnout, so there was a very high level of mobilization, and the high voter turnout then kind of sunk the percentage. What we also have to remember, and I'm going to finish that because I think they want to all ask questions, is we have now, and we're looking into reports about irregularities that we received from across the party. We never actually even considered that, but based on the high number of requests from people who said that they voted for us and their votes were not counted. We have a preferential vote system in Slovakia, so you can basically give preferential vote to certain candidates. And in the districts they voted, they saw that one of the candidates that they clearly marked as having a preferential vote at 0. That raises suspicion, so we are now collecting the inputs, and if this is something which will be in large enough numbers, we will be likely filing a case with the Constitutional Court, but this is something which I don't have any assessment or expectations, and we don't want to question the result, but this is where we were really pushed by the public to do something about it because there was a substantial concern.
And so the way things stand as of today, yesterday, Matović, who's going to be probably the future prime minister, was asked by the president to start the coalition talks with the other 3 winning parties. What is your take on what's going to be the policy focus of the government, and which are the topics where you, as a member of ALDE, a liberal, as a Green MEP, where is it that you may show some fear of the priority topics not being sufficiently represented by the future coalition? Because, as you've mentioned, the campaign before the elections was rightly and very predominantly driven by the anti-corruption fight, by the theme of mafia, by the recovery of the whole society after the murder of Ján Kuciak and his fiancée. So it was very driven by the justice and anti-something movement. But many of us wonder what is it that the new coalition will be actually for. And so will the interests and rights of liberal voters and interests of the planet and of the environmental movement be sufficiently represented in your view?
To illustrate you the situation, today's Thursday, less than a week after elections, the discussions between the 3 to 4 potential coalition parties are going on today. The party of the former President Kiska should decide whether they're going to join the coalition or not, because, of course, there are severe concerns about the second largest coalition partner, which is the party that I'm not sure if they're a member officially of ID, but ahead of the European election, their chairman, Mr. Kolar, was aligning himself and hosting Mr. Salvini and Mrs. Le Pen in Bratislava. We were doing protests in front of it. So you have to realize that Slovakia is likely going to have, most likely, because the Matović wants them, it's most likely going to have a government with an ID party in it. And secondly, that the discussion has been not about what do we want to do. When you look at the Slovak media, discussion was not about, to a large extent, what are going to be the main priorities of the government. bar the questioning of the populistic promise of the ID party that there will be 25,000 rental homes every year, rental flats every year, but about who will get which ministry. So at the moment, it's not really easy to say what they actually want to do in terms of a policy. And this is something which remains still open. In terms of an environment, there was originally the ID party, they called We Are Family, and they're headed by an entrepreneur which has, I think, 10 children with 9 women. So they are family, but upholding the traditional Christian values, of course. They are family, and there were rumors of nominee to run the Ministry of Environment, who was in the past kind of very damaging in this sector, being involved in basically uprooting the Environmental Protection Administration to quite some extent, and in business with within the forestry sector. So there was an uproar, and apparently the party said, no, okay, we're giving up on that ministry. But again, that's showcasing the point is who will get which ministry, not which policies will be or what will be focused on our government. And that's quite sad for the country. You know, not caring about liberals or Progressive Slovakia or whatever. I think what is important is how the country will be run, and when the government is discussing the post rather than what they want to achieve itself.
So before I hand over to you for questions, my last question is about the future for Progressive Slovakia. The party is undergoing, obviously, a deep reflection this week. The chairman stepped down, and there will be a big conversation about the new leadership. I wonder what is the parameters of the next leader that you're looking for after Progressive Slovakia gave Slovakia the first female president. I wonder if Slovakia is ready for the first chairwoman of a political party.
Well, Michal Truban, I think, did a very good job despite the result, and of course it's something completely natural to take the consequence out of it and step down. So we'll have working on the preparation in the presidency, on the preparation of the extraordinary party congress, which will be held in the next weeks, and of course, as per our statutes, that means the entire, not just the party chairman, but the entire presidency is resigning, and we will need to take decisions, including whether we're going to be running for our jobs again, the same ones, different ones. There is the first candidate. I'm very happy for the first candidate for the party chairman, Irena Bihariová. She is female lawyer, former civil rights activist. For Slovakia, she is of Romani origin, which adds it to very strong statement from my point of view, because it's not only women, but also women of Roma origin. And I'm personally backing her. She has, in my view, quite a bit of a support in the party, and she has also quite a bit of a public support. So that's where I have my hopes high. And for us, what was great to see, despite what happened, was that within the party, but also outside within the public, there is a whole way of support saying, don't give up. Because we are, and that's a very sad thing, I would like not to be, but we are the only political force in the country standing up for the civil liberal values. We are the only ones who are really pushing for such elementary things like, gender equality, the LGBTI, but also, normal, non-populist social justice issues. We are the strongest on environment. So this is something where I really believe that there is a demand for the type of a politics that we do. And there is still lots of work for us to do. It's not about us having posts, it's about us bringing the country forward.
So thanks for these introductory words. Now it's over to you. Please feel free to ask Martin whatever you're interested in terms of Slovakia or his work here in Brussels. Anybody brave enough?
No questions.
Or do we need more coffee? Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm Clement from Slovenia. I have more logistic question. You are the new party, right? I'm interested in how did you do the headhunting for the elections, and how many local branches of the party you have in Slovakia?
Maybe just to repeat for live stream, the question was how you did headhunting for the party and how many local branches you have and how did you run the local campaign, I assume.
So, in number of the local branches, God, actually, you caught me there. I think we have around 40 right now. I would have to look it up. It's a sad thing that as a member of presidency, I don't know it by heart, but we have around 40 branches and growing membership. We are actually vetting the members because before we admit a member, we try to do our best that she or he is in line with the values that she or he doesn't have any kind of black marks, so to say, from involvement in things. So the classic, I would say. And then the second, the headhunting. So part of the people which are interesting want to join us, and the second thing is, I was member of the group of people which initially founded the party, and there are people within this group who are coming from business, who are coming from the civil society. Some of them brush the politics, but not so much. But I think what is important to say is that we are more or less from one generation, so the people in early 40s and 30s, and some in late 20s, and we have quite wide networks, and that's where this helped us to kind of be in touch with people and convince them to join us, not just for the elections but in general. So for me, one of the biggest wins, or kind of one of the biggest approaches from the European circle is that we had Vlado Šucha, who used to have the JRC, on our candidate list. And that's something which I find from him amazingly brave, and actually, you can use the word still, I believe, patriotic. He gave up a top-ranking position in the commission, where I believe he was doing a tremendous job. I said, okay, I need to go back to try to help my country. And this is something which I value very, very highly. So using the networks that we have and approaching different people, and people were approaching us.
Yes, Rick, please.
Thanks. I'm Rick Zednik. I work with an organization called Women Political Leaders. My question, and I arrived a little bit late, so apologies if you addressed this, but you talked about the good of the country, which I care deeply about as a Slovak citizen. What do you think is the best case scenario from the current government negotiations, and what could be the worst case scenario? And again, not from your party perspective, but from the country's perspective.
So maybe, I don't know if I should repeat the questions for the lecture. Yes, probably. So from the women political leaders, Rick Zednik asked what is the best and worst case scenario in terms of the scenarios that are up and coming for Slovakia.
So, okay, so taking the party head off. The worst case scenario, I sometimes tend to start with those, is potential evolution into crossover between Orbán and Kaczynski. That's the worst case scenario, because yes, you can. There are, the Matović has a certain traits of a strong populist politician. So I'm not saying this is going to happen. I hope it's not going to happen. But if you ask for a worst case scenario, significant turn to the kind of very conservative, very right wing, kind of isolationist approach. The best case scenario is a government that will really move substantially on the corruption and the systemic issues, and it's hard to judge honestly beyond that. So this is something where it remains to be seen still. Also because from the programs, some of the things that were there were kind of, outrageously ambitious or populistic, you could say. When you hear, I'm kind of one of the very, I would call it, progressive people on climate, and that's therefore, because I was in charge of the green program in the party, I believe that our program was assessed by the NGOs as the best and most ambitious. Yet it was the winner of the election who committed to the NGOs that they're going to phase out the gas use in the country by 2030. I would love to do that, honestly, but we didn't dare to say it because we just don't know how. As an ambition, beautiful. We need to go climate neutral tomorrow, ideally. So for me, this was a worrying signal of the parties being able to promise anything. 25,000 new flats for rental flats every year, getting rid of gas by 2030 just to get the votes. And this is where I'm a bit concerned of what is going to come out of the promises. And I would be so happy to be wrong. If Slovakia gets out of gas by 2030 in a just way, in a way that doesn't destroy the economy, oh yeah, we should be leading the world. I would be like, guys, perfect. But I'm afraid they don't have the people and the skills to do that, nor the willingness.
What is the probability, you would say, that the up-and-coming coalition will complete the term, the full 4-year term of a government? Especially because of what you're saying, and especially because of the broad values spread among the 4 parties that are likely to form the coalition. Some people are afraid that the spread is simply too broad for them to last, and that's why some people fear that it's just the beginning of a transition, not really a beginning of a new era yet.
Well, I'm not Baroš Šefčovič. I don't have a foresight under my portfolio, nor I didn't bring my crystal ball with me. I somehow left it in the office, so I cannot tell you. But I believe that what we need to be, from a perspective of Progressive Slovakia, what we need to do is we need to not count with early elections. We should just do our job properly from the day one, being a strong voice of progressive politics in the country, basically being the opposition as we would be in the parliament, working with the public and pushing for the changes that the country and Europe needs anyway. And if there will be early elections, we need to be able to react and be ready. And if there won't be, then we need to be able to hold on for the 4 years and then be more successful, full stop, next time around. And not to mention, we have regional and municipal elections in 2.5 years, and we need to be doing well, and I hope we'll be doing well in those, and that's going to be a lot of work. And if the government holds the entire 4 years, then it's going to be a year of 3 major elections, because it will be February 2024. So you would have parliament elections, you would have presidential elections, and you have the European elections within half a year. So that would be something to really, really get tough on, and not easy. So we'll see. We just have to do what we can.
Are there other questions, please?
Anders from Sweden. Obviously, this is a difficult question because of all the uncertainty, but if the current negotiations works out with the coalition, how would you assess, and I'm aware that this is a difficult question, but how would you assess that Slovakia's role in the EU would change as a consequence of that, or will it change?
So if the coalition negotiations work out, is the role of Slovakia in the EU likely to change?
This is really hard question. The coalition parties, beside kind of the party aligned with the EU, have always been declared themselves of being pro-European. But And that's where kind of the variability starts. I think the party of the former president, Mr. Kiska, I would say is the most pro-European. The foreign policy that is headed by Tomáš Halášek, which some of you might know, and that is the least of a concern, but that would be the smallest coalition party. SIs, they used to be liberals, but they are with the ECR, and although they declare themselves to be kind of the voice of the reason in Europe, their people, well, their chairman has been a bit close to AfD in Germany, which is a bit worrying. So that's, and he took down the government of Iveta Radičová in 2010 because of the Greeks. Yeah. So we will see. Then you have the ID party that's still to be remains in what's their position, and Olano, the winning party, is declaring themselves to be pro-European. They have one MEP which sits with EPP, although they are not an EPP member. So let's hope for the best.
Are there more questions? Not for now. One other question that I was meaning to ask is about the information infrastructure in Slovakia. Many of us didn't see it coming, Matovič winning, and then he ended up winning with 25%. Obviously, part of it is the algorithms on the social media, and to which degree we see the reality that the other half or other parts of the society are seeing. So what do you think is the importance or the lesson learned from this perspective for us to really be able to tune into what is actually happening in the society? Because Progressive Slovakia banked on local campaign. You pride yourself with having been in every single village and every single town in Slovakia. So the footwork was done. The movement is really close to the voters, and you're really one of the parties that is able to say that you're close to the people and understand them. And still you didn't manage to reflect this understanding, I feel, in the strategy, obviously because you weren't elected. So where do you feel is the future in terms of campaigning strategies and the right use of social media?
I would actually thank you for the question, because I think there is one element about the result which kind of might have influenced it. We have this syndrome in Slovakia, is that when a party that's kind of not your choice, but kind of your second choice, gets close to the 5% threshold, number of the voters tend to migrate to that party to rescue it. And the fact that the coalitions need 7% is something which is not widely known. And that's where I believe, and other people believe, we actually lost part of the voters in the last moment. There were two opinion polls during the embargo. We have 2 weeks embargo on opinion polls. There were two opinion polls where basically the civil society decided to bypass the embargo because of our now outgoing chief of the parliament wanted to make it into 50 days embargo, basically crowdfunding opinion polls. So you had secret opinion polls, which anyone who contributed €1 would get. And no newspapers or no media could report about it because of the fines, but you as an individual could share it with others. So everybody knew them. And in those opinion polls, you had the SAS and Kiska's party and the Christian Democrats, kind of the ordinary normal Christian Democrats, next to the 5% threshold. And part of our voters likely moved to rescue SAS and to rescue Kiska's party. And therefore we lost a few percent because no one realized those few percent might be crucial for us. We went under the threshold because Kiska's party as well as the SAS had less than us, but they needed only 5%. But in terms of the social media, I think there is a bigger problem than this. And this is something which is, I believe, one of the fundamental dangers for the liberal democracy in Europe and elsewhere. And that's the way at the moment that the social media, especially Facebook, is operating in terms of the spreading of misinformation. The algorithm is built very simply. It's basically built to maximize the profit, which means it tries to keep you on the platform as long as possible. Now, the way to keep you on the platform as long as possible is to create emotional or instinctive reaction. That's a normal approach. Nothing bad about that, but it is often the misinformation. It is the very populistic messages that are creating mostly such a reaction. So often this is something which is kind of being extraportionate. Not intentionally, I believe, by the social media. It's just this is what gets the reaction, you know. And additionally to that, the Facebook hasn't been really able to enforce even its own rules in terms of the spread of political advertising outside of the kind of marked or specified political like it was political advertising, but it wasn't marked as such. And really, the spread of misinformation ahead of the elections on the social media was very, very wide. And I'm not saying now, okay, well, let's blame Facebook for us not getting in or anything like that. But I believe that in the way, and I think that the Germans among you may understand it the most, is there is no responsibility for what you publish. That's why, based on the very sad learnings from the history in Germany, there are such tight rules about, you know, publishing and making sure that everybody knows and it can be traced who is responsible for what was published. It's not to, you know, clamp down on freedom of speech. It's to be able to hold people accountable for what they say. And this is what was not happening and what is not happening on the social media. And it had certain impact on the elections. I think it's helping to support the rise of populism. And this is something which I believe is potentially risky for the liberal democracy across the board. And we have to see on not kind of clamping down freedom of speech, but really making sure that the people are responsible for what they say, that they are able to stand behind it. The number of death threats to liberal candidates, number of hate, that's staggering. What our people, and not just our people, faced on social media is sometimes, for me, very, very worrying. And that's something that I believe we as Europe need to look into.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Hi, Naji. What's your question?
Dobré ráno, Nadia Kovalčíková. Good morning, Nadia Kovalčíková. My question is simple. What do you think are the three main reasons that, or three main things that went wrong that you think you could have done as a party or party members differently?
So what are the three main things that went wrong that you could have done differently?
I don't dare to say honestly. This is at this moment for me. I really want to first go through the reflection within the party and get more insights. Just because I can tell you a few things that I believe could have been done better. Yes, we covered the entire country, but maybe we should have focused even more effort on the bigger cities where we have more support. So kind of where do you put the focus in the campaign? We might have been better in how are we bringing the message across in a way that captures the voters' attention and ultimately emotion. We're not rational as humans. We're not built to be rational biologically. This is something which I honestly first want to see and go through, kind of having a deeper analysis within the party to actually have a bit more data. At this moment, as I said, I was not in the core campaign team as an MEP. There was no reason for me to do that, and I have a job here and a duty to my voters. So I want to first see kind of how we're going to assess it and basically act based on that. I don't want to be kind of giving out of the hand statements of
other comments before we start concluding? Yes, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christina. I'm also from Slovakia. I was wondering, you said that no party has environment as a big priority, but do you see any individual that could pick up on, for example, your work in Eastern Slovakia, or also in the context of Green New Deal talks going on?
So do you see any individuals working on the green subjects? I didn't get the Eastern
Yeah,
Slovakia point.
Your work with the environmental issues in Eastern Slovakia.
Oh, the files you're working on, the factories in Eastern
Okay,
Slovakia.
yeah, I'll keep on going with that. I wasn't running in the parliament elections. For me, this is something like my work in Slovakia, the work that I'm trying to do on pushing the environmental agenda also on the national level. For me, this is part of what I should do as an MEP to really connect Europe and Slovakia, and that's something which is going to go on. There was nothing really related. Okay, I was doing it for elections. It just last week, for you to know, last week I was in the east. There is a massive ongoing contamination issue with toxic chemicals, something I've been working on 20 years ago and still need to try to get done. So this is going to go on. There is nothing going to be changing. And in terms of the other environment leaders in parties, I heard about Mr. Michovsky from Olano that he might be running the environment ministry. He is mostly focused on biodiversity. So we will have to see how it goes. Olano is apparently, Smerodina is apparently not getting the ministry, although they had high interest. So we will see. At the moment, I don't dare to judge. I was expecting, honestly, that Mr. Budaj will be from Olano will be into the environmental ministry. That doesn't seem to be the case. But there I would have a concern since some of the pre-election discussions on climate, he was actually quite critical to the climate movement, as you know, you should go back to school, which it surprised me. So let's see. And I think this is my call all the time to the civil society: is be active on whatever issues you care. Be active, be part of society. Keep the pressure on your elected representatives. When I meet with the public, I always ask them, please push me. It's for my own sake that I'm constantly reminded that what my job is to basically serve you guys, because that's what we are for. That's what, when we ask for your support and confidence, that we promise to do so. I hope the civil society will keep this government, as they should any government, always in check.
For more information, go to podcast Lights on Europe, where I just interviewed Martin, also in the context of this week's meeting with Greta Thunberg about his views on the future of green policies in Slovakia. The last question I have is more to give you an opportunity for a bit of a call for action. You've touched upon on the huge, almost security risk of people who are going into politics in Slovakia. You've mentioned that it's going to be hugely important for the future of the movement to recruit new people who will be ready as leaders to step up their civic responsibility, in a sense, either in the up and coming local elections or in the next parliamentary elections. And so, as in Brussels, we are so big on collaboration and helping each other that I would like to give you an opportunity to maybe speak to the people here or those listening to us. Is there any way for people who want to support you and the movement in any way, or Slovakia in any way, what can they do to support your efforts for the values of the movement to be heard more?
Well, that's something which I think as a Progressive Slovakia, we haven't been good enough since our start. There's a massive room for improvement, is exactly the international collaboration. And not meaning that we haven't done anything, but we've been actually since the start for the last 3 years in a constant campaigning, because we always had some elections. And that's where one of the things I'm hoping to bring more to the party is help to build up the capacities in the movement, the skills in the movement, and help to grow the movement, especially on the environmental side. of course, since it's closest to my heart. And that's what I'm really hoping for, increasing the collaboration and hoping for, support in any form from ALDE, where we are very happy to be a member, and the kind of various organizations linked with ALDE, because I believe we have a lot to learn, but also we are very willing to share what we learned and what we know, because yes, now we might look down, and now we might look a bit depressed, but we are very determined, and we are actually full of energy to go on. But I would have to say also that we have, as a new party, we have a mayor of the capital, the president, and have won European elections within, quite a short time. So maybe we should have gotten this meeting to be able to reflect. So we are very happy to share what we know, but we also would be very honored to learn from you all and to get better, because that's what I believe we should all do, is work together and learn from each other to make sure that the liberal values are getting stronger. Thank you.
So thank you once again. Thanks to all of you for support, for your interest in Slovakia and helping us make Slovakia a bit more European than people get it for now. So thanks a lot and wish you a nice day.
Thank you for coming.